What's up, you guys? This is Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park, and you're watching the Kerrang podcast. The part of it that was conscious, the part of making the record that was conscious was like in the beginning, I think about 2 years ago, we had some conversations about like what kind of record we would want to make. And to the man, everybody described the same thing. And to me, that was really kind of shocking at the time, and also really reassuring, because it's almost like we'd independently all come to the same conclusion about like what we wanted to do. And of all of the different options that exist out there in the world, I mean, to all end up at the same place, that's pretty cool. But it wasn't anything as specific as like describing what the album sounded like. It was more like about things like song structure and even addressing like commercial appeal. I mean, we were very specific about like the fact that was not as high on our priority list, you know? And it's not that we wanted to make non-commercial songs. It's just that we wanted to make songs without paying attention to that at all. And I think the issue for us wasn't that we had ever said, oh, we're just going to write like, you know, commercial singles on the other albums. It's just that it was probably in the back of our head, you know, or it was like that's what we liked. So we wanted something that was like a 3-minute compact little, you know, firecracker of a song. And now our taste is just different. We don't mind like being in the middle of a song and kind of just exploring that sound and that space a little more and seeing where it goes. So that's why you end up on this record getting, you know, some tracks are as long as about 6 minutes. Even the single, the Catalyst, the original version, the real version of that one is what, it's like 5 minutes, almost 50 seconds or something. Yeah. People have this misconception that when you make a song, or when we make a song, you're trying to like go after an inspiration or like imitate something you've heard, or, you know, that's really not how we work. I mean, almost never. And I think what we're really trying to do when on this record in particular, it was more about like not relying on our old tricks or our old, like the things that we knew worked, you know, because if you know, like if you're approaching in the most simple example, if you're in a verse and it's relatively quiet and you're approaching a chorus and you want the chorus to feel big, you can throw a heavy, you know, power chord on it and it'll work, right? But the thing is, like, that to us, that was so boring. It's like we've done that a bajillion times, and we were sick of doing it. It just every time this was starting to happen on the last record. Like that's why you didn't get as much of that there, is we were trying to find new solutions to those problems. And just problems being not negative, but problems being like when you're trying to solve, like crack the code of what is going to be, you know, what's going to make this song tick. And so we were in the middle of making this record and started to discover like ways to make new sounds that were, you know, original, like one of a kind sounds and rhythms and nothing that you could like, I mean, just go buy the keyboard and turn on patch number 10 and there it is, you know? I mean, there's a little bit of stuff like that on any record, but I think the foundation of this record is built on a lot of handcrafted sounds. Whenever we make a record, we're trying to do something that's exciting and new and you know, unique, but and I think it's easy to forget that. Like when we did Hybrid Theory, at the time it was really, you know, it lived in the same world as some other, you know, bands, but we were really trying to do something that those bands and other bands weren't doing, you know, because we had our rap and electronic vocabulary was, in our minds, we had a different vocabulary maybe a broader vocabulary than a lot of the bands that were trying to incorporate some of that stuff. It was a little bit newer at the time. And then in the years after, it became really common, you know? And even today I hear albums that sound like they, you know, they're heavily inspired by the stuff that was going on back then, maybe heavily inspired by Hybrid Theory, whatever it may be. And if you know, if other bands can imitate that and kind of recreate that sound, then imagine how easy it is for us to do. You know what I mean? It's like, it would be some lazy stuff for us to do that today. So when we're in the studio, I think we're just trying to make something that sounds, you know, sounds unique, and it's definitely not. The one thing I want our fans to know is it's not that we're trying to by making a new an album that sounds different from these other albums that had maybe had guitar featured more. It's not that we're saying that that's not cool or that we don't like those songs anymore. I mean, when you come to our concert, we're going to play those songs, you know. So clearly we're not against that. We're just trying to keep ourselves challenged and get better at what we do, and you know, find new kind of new roads to travel. Well, when we started 1,000 Suns, we were making these demos that, like, we actually recorded some of it in Europe. We were doing some demos in God, I remember there was we did some stuff in Berlin, we did some stuff in Prague, and also in like New York City. And we'd never like worked on music in those places. It was mostly me. I would like take days at studios, you know, when we had days off on tour, and just play around with some new sounds. And by the time we really got into the the process of starting this album, the stuff was really like different, and it was partially because of the ways that I was starting those demos, and partially just because our like intentions were different. And then the structures were really loose, like almost like jamming, you know what I mean? Like the verses and choruses and other parts just kind of flowed into each other, almost like there was no structure. And the music was really almost psychedelic. And at that point, the guys were questioning whether or not we even needed a producer. Like a lot of them, I think most of them wanted me to produce the album at that point. And we got to talking about it, and it seemed like it would be a good idea to just give some producers a shot at, we should meet with some people and just see what they have to offer, like play them some of the stuff and see what they do. And when we met with Rick, it was, you know, I walking into it, I was a little bit afraid, as were some of the other guys, that, you know, going with him, he might try and like put a touch on it somehow that would change the direction, and we really didn't want that to happen. And then after we met with him, it was clear that he really understood what we were doing and loved it and didn't want to change it at all. He, in fact, what ended up happening is he wanted to keep us on track with it and keep it pure. He comes in like once a week, once a month even, which is really, you know, infrequent. I mean, it's kind of too infrequent for some bands, but for us, it works out really well because we are so like self-sufficient and we can get the job done. I think he knows that. In fact, he knows that it can be our weakness to be as good at engineering as we are, because we can take a bad song and make it sound like it's a good song. And so, you know, he's always constantly trying to hear the heart of the song through all the production and make sure that that's really good. We had a few conversations during the making of this record where we talked about like expectations of ourselves, expectations of the fans, and then also like the fact that we have a lot of existing relationships with folks who you know, promote records and like radio stations who love the band, and obviously we're really grateful for that, and we feel like we have an opportunity to maybe hand them something that's more challenging, and they'll be on board to play it, as opposed to like a brand new band that they don't know could hand them something that's really kind of different, and they might they might turn away from it. But we've kind of got a thing, you know, we've been doing this with, you know, K-Rock in LA is like our home station. Like I grew up listening to K-Rock, and we know people there, and they love the band, and because we're a hometown, you know, homegrown band, and if we give them something and say, you know, we know it's a little crazy, but like let's give it a shot. We want to push the boundary of what you guys play on the station. They'll be because it's us. We know they'll give it a shot. It may flop, it may fall right down on its face, but that's just the benefit of being where we're at. And we've never really like realized that or even taken advantage of that until this record, you know. So to be able to hand them a song like The Catalyst, which, you know, given the climate of what is, you know, being played out there right now, at least on the radio in the US, it was more challenging, and they knew it, and they were okay with that. And I think we're starting to see a lot of people turn around. Well, we're actually, I go home in a couple of days, and we're going to jump into rehearsals when I get back. And we've been setting up, basically, in order to play these new songs, we've had to add and change some gear in the live setup, because there is more like, you know, electronic bass stuff going on the record, and the guitars tend to play like a little bit more of a like a supporting role. I mean, they're just, especially like if you listen to the mix, like even on the Catalyst, it's kind of like mixed back a little bit. And so, you know, when it comes to the live show, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see who's gonna play what, because actually the funny thing is, I think a lot of people don't. One of the misconceptions about our band is that, you know, Brad plays guitar and Rob plays drums. Like in reality, Rob plays piano too, and Brad can play keyboards. Phoenix grew up playing violin and guitar, and then he played bass. Like I think the guys are capable of doing some different things, and especially if we set up the gear right, choose the right things for different people to trade places and do. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually don't know how it's going to play out at this point, but we're definitely going to play songs from all the different, you know, records, and some stuff from the new album as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us on the Kerrang podcast, Mike.
Awesome, man.